I have a passion for ideas. I believe in the power of ideas, and I believe that a mind expanded to a new idea never returns to its original size. Once you learn something, you become aware of something, it's impossible to not be aware of that anymore. And so I wanted to bring you 4 books, 4 relationship books. These are must-read books. And these 4 particular books have absolutely changed my love life, changed my relationship world. And I want to share with you a few of the ideas out of this book that can change your world as well. So 2 of these books deal with the relationship with ourselves. The other 2 deal with the interpersonal relationships that we have with others. And ultimately, how do we increase the love that we experience in our life? So the first book is Learning to Love Yourself by Dr. Gay Hendricks. Dr. Hendricks is a mentor of mine, a good friend of mine. He's amazing. And what I love is he has his PhD from Stanford. He's a psychologist. And he wrote this little tiny book that is just life-changing, because one of the most challenging concepts is that concept of how do you love yourself? Like, we know we need to love ourselves in order to be in a loving relationship. And you've heard the quote that you can only love somebody as well as you love yourself. And so that becomes this great governor on the amount of intimacy that we can experience in our lives, emotional connection that we can have in our lives. And so how the hell do you love yourself more? This was a huge conundrum for me on my journey of love. In fact, mastering this skill, and I wouldn't even say mastering it really, but just getting better at this, I remember the moment when I began to practice these principles and my heart opened in ways that it had not been opened in years. Hadn't been opened since I had closed it when my parents divorced. I remember shutting my heart down, saying, I don't want to experience pain like this. I'm going to shut myself down. And anytime we go through relationship pain, whether it's conscious or way more often subconscious, we close the door to protect ourselves. But that very door that we're closing is the door that keeps love out. So how do you begin to open that door again? How do you overcome the fear of the betrayal and the fear of getting hurt and all of that? It's the key is right here. It's in learning to love yourself. When you can love yourself through the pain and the emotions and all the places that you don't like yourself and all the things that you condemn about yourself. And so the one idea, I highly recommend reading all these books. I want to give you one powerful idea from each one. The idea from this book that absolutely changed my life is that love is greater than any other emotion or experience. And so what Dr. Hendricks talks about is that you could be loathing an aspect of yourself, and love is like this container that can wrap around the criticism or the anger or the judgment or the shame that you have for yourself. And it can wrap around that and heal it. And so he was describing these interactions he was having with his clients. And a client would come in and he'd want to work on this self-love. And Dr. Hendricks would say, so are you willing to love yourself? And he was like, no, I'm not willing to love yourself. And then what you can do is you can go meta levels with each level of resistance that you have. And so he said, are you willing to love the part of you that's resistant to loving yourself? And the person thought and was kind of turned within and was like, I don't know. And he's like, are you willing to love the part of you that doesn't know if you're willing to love the part of you that's resistant to loving yourself? And he took it like 3 levels up. And he finally got to this level. I think it was the 3rd level where the client softened. He was like, yeah, I'm willing to love the part of me that's confused, the part of me that's uncertain. I can love that part of me. You can love the aspects of yourself. Doesn't mean you have to approve of that, maybe a behavior that you didn't like in the past or something you feel guilty about. You don't have to approve the behavior to be able to love yourself. And that's incredibly healing, incredibly freeing, and you can literally feel the layers begin to melt away in the self-love process. So, life-transforming idea, Learning to Love Yourself, Dr. Gay Hendricks. The second book that completely changed my life is this one, The 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem by Dr. Nathaniel Branden. What I love about bringing you these books is most of these books are not international #1 New York Times best-selling books, but they have changed people's lives. And so if you haven't read these, check these out. Dr. Nathaniel Branden writes in this book, central idea changed my life. 2 things. Number 1, self-esteem is not something you're born with or without. Self-esteem is not something you either have or you don't have, and it's set from the moment that you're born. Self-esteem is grown. It's a muscle. It can be cultivated. And there are practices that actually grow your self-esteem. Just like if you want to become stronger, there are exercises you can do to grow your strength. Just like if you want to run faster or longer, there's training that you can do to improve your cardiovascular health. What if you could actually do exercises, a way of using your mind, your beingness that could actually grow your self-esteem to such a degree that you were free from the opinions and the approvals of others, that you had such a self-worth that you were able to go after your dreams unfettered by paradigms, doubts, or fears? What if you could have a level of belief and certainty and self-esteem that you were just naturally attracting these beautiful, healthy relationships because that was your major dominant vibration? Well, this book gives you the 6 pillars and the 6 exercises of doing just that. I'll give you one of these. One of the exercises is the practice of self-assertiveness. And what this means is, and we talk about this in a loving way, not in a challenging, argumentative way, but when you assert your needs, your priorities at the level of other people's, when you assert what it is that you would love, maybe you want that promotion, maybe you want that raise, maybe there's a rattle that you had with a family member, and instead of letting them just, have their way or walk all over you, you're going to actually assert yourself and you say, you know what, that didn't feel very good, that conversation that we had, and I would love to be treated with respect. When you assert yourself in those ways, you're demonstrating. Or you go to your boss and you ask for the raise, or you actually start writing the book because you know you deserve it. When you assert yourself in those ways, self-assertiveness, you're actually communicating to your subconscious mind that you value yourself. What a fascinating idea. Our own value of ourself is done through behaviors, through our spoken word, through our actions, because those is not just thinking the thought, oh, I value and love myself. That is important, but it's actually acting congruent with those ideas that prove to your internal self-image and your internal belief system that you really do value yourself. And that's where the internal conflict and argument, where the fears and the doubts begin to melt away. It is a beautiful result, beautiful experience. So 6 pillars of self-esteem. Thank you, Dr. Nathaniel Branden. The next book that changed my life, and this one is a New York Times best-selling book. It is The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work by the great Gottman Institute, Dr. John Gottman. And this book has brilliant ideas in it. One that really changed my life, and it's this concept called turning towards one another. And here's what's brilliant about it, because these are such small moments, inconspicuous moments, moments that you would miss without actually understanding that in relationships, it's small hinges that swing big doors. It's usually not the big catastrophe that sabotages relationships. It's a million little small things that add up over time. And so one of these is called turning towards your partner. You see, in relationships, we'll each make a bid for attention. A bid might be like you're in the kitchen with each other and you're like, hey, babe. And does the person turn and look at you, or they just say, yeah, and they still scroll on their phone looking at TikTok or looking at social media, right? A bid for attention could be like someone saying, hey, look at this over there. And the person turns and was like, oh yeah, that is amazing. How cool is that? These bids for attention are like, hey, I want to share my day with you. Do you have a few minutes? And the person stops and turns towards that person, brings their full presence for the few minutes that they have. What these turning towards moments are, when one person bids for attention, that's what that is. When you're calling the other person's name, or you're saying, hey, check this out, or look at this, that's a bid for attention. When the other person matches that bid, what they're ultimately saying is, you matter to me, this relationship matters to me, and I'm willing to prioritize you. It's subtle, it's small, but it is a small hinge that swings a very, very big door. And so none of us are perfect at this. I know I'm not perfect at this, but when I'm conscious, when I'm aware, I try to, I'll put my phone down and turn to my wife and connect with her. When at the end of our day, she wants to share about her day and we're brushing our teeth, I'll put it down and I'll turn, I'll sit and I'll listen. Here, tell me about your day. What happened? These moments are really, really powerful for creating a super solid foundation in the relationship. And the last book that I'm going to bring to you is this one, Project Everlasting. Now, you might be thinking, why are you bringing me this book, Matt? And of course, this book changed my life because this is the book that I wrote with my best friend as we interviewed America's greatest marriages for their ideas around what makes love last. And I want to share with you one idea out of this book that changed my life, and it can change your life as well. And it was the idea that all these couples talked about love and this feeling of love that we chase, this feeling of euphoria that often comes on early in the relationship, and how it evolves and how it expands and how it never really goes away, but it does change, and it definitely ebbs and flows at times, especially with the mood and whether or not you're getting along with your partner, your significant other. And they say too many people feel like if they're not feeling in love, that the love is gone, it's lost, and it freaks them out, and they're never going to get it again. They said, here's what's super important to realize, that love is not a feeling. And I remember hearing that and being like, well, that's the first time I'm hearing this. They said, love is a decision to act loving. Real love is a decision to give to the other person. It's a decision to serve, a decision to show up for them. And I thought, isn't that interesting? And they said, here's what's fascinating. Even when you're not feeling in love, the very act of acting in love, giving to the other person, will cause the feelings to rise up in you. They go, it's really fascinating. And so I remember one particular story that really touched me that I would love to share with you. It's a couple, Ruthie and Dirk Dirksen, married over 50 years. And I was talking to Ruthie actually on the phone as we were driving across Wyoming, and I'm seeing all these buffalo, and she's telling me about their story, their greatest marriage for her. They said they had this cool way of giving to one another where they would write each other love notes and they would hide them around the house. And they'd hide them so well that it would be like months would go by before they would find these love notes. And so she would be pulling out some plates in the kitchen to set the table, and then there would be a little note that flutters to the ground, and she'd pick it up and it would say, "You're beautiful." And it was written by, of course, her husband. And so she'd go and write him a note and stick it in his drawers and his sweaters. And then winter would come along. He'd put on a sweater and feel something scratchy and pull it and reach it out, and a little love note that said, "I love you." And so they would have this practice for decades. She goes, it was towards the end of his life. And he had contracted this disease that caused him to be extremely tired. He would go to bed at 1 p.m. and sleep. And she said that continued on for many months until it really was the final day of his life. And she remember holding him and laying in bed with him. She was behind him, holding him. The whole family had gathered around. And they'd been married over 50 years. And the thought that just kept going through her mind while she was holding him and reflecting on the day they met, and reflecting on all the many notes that they had with one another, and reflecting on the incredible adventures that they had, 50 years. And she goes, it felt like it went by like that. She was like, it was so fast, and I'm holding him and I'm feeling his breathing get slower and slower until it finally stopped. And she was like, in that moment, the love of my life was gone. And how I had wanted more time. I wanted more memories. I wanted more experiences together. And the times that, she goes, I thought about the arguments we had and some of the petty stuff that we make such a big deal in these moments when really in the grand scheme of things, it's such a small thing. Her main message to me, and she goes, I hope that you spread this message, is just how fast life goes. And to not hold back, to tell each other that you love each other, to go for what you would love, to make the life that you do have as rich as possible. Because we will all get to the end of our life one day. Every one of us will have put our head on the pillow for the last time. And the question will be, how well did we love in this life? She told me that a few weeks after his passing, she went to her drawers to pull out a dress. And she reached in, she felt her hand touch this little piece of paper. And she knew what it was. And she just got chills to her toes. And she pulled it out, and it was a love note from him. But as she opened it, it wasn't one of the love notes that he had hidden previously. This particular love note somehow, because the last couple of weeks of his life, he was bedridden. He hadn't even gotten out of bed. But somehow he had found the strength when she wasn't around to climb out of bed, find a pen, write on this little piece of paper, "Love you," in shaky handwriting, so that she would know how much she meant to him. And he hid it for her. And then she sent me the note, and it looks like this. And her last message was, remember how fast it goes. play full out, love with an open heart, because all of us only have so much time. And that touched me so deeply. The recognition that love is not a feeling. And if you only have so much, what are ways in which we could love this day? What are ways in which we could give this day? What are ways in which we could lean in, express ourselves even more? There might be a phone call that you need to have this day, someone who needs to hear from you this day. There might be an apology that needs to be made. It might be someone that you're in a relationship with, you haven't talked to them in a while, and they need to know how important they are in your life. Whatever the action is, know this: we don't know how much time we've got. But love is that decision to give, to act, to express it. These 4 books have absolutely changed my love life for the better, changed my entire life for the better, and I hope they do you as well. My question for you is, what idea have you learned, whether it's from a book or whether it's from some other source, what idea have you learned that's absolutely changed your love life? Go ahead and chat that idea in the comment section below. This is going to be a really powerful conversation. And know this: I appreciate you. The love that you want, the possibility that you're dreaming of really can be your life as you take steps and you lead with giving and leading with love. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you soon.